Dude, you are getting well. Dude, welcome.
Thanks for having me, brother. Fired up.
Yes, me too. It's Friday where I am. I guess we're on the same part of the planet, so as where you are. I'm excited for the energy today, and I'm just gotten to talk to leaders all day about what they're creating in their world. David Kitchen, welcome to Dude, You're Getting Well.
Thank you,
Do I
brother.
call
I
you
can't.
Coach Kitch? I like that.
Yeah, you can call me Coach Kitch. Kitch. I think the only person that calls me David is probably my mother.
Oh, good to know. See, I've been calling you that. I say people are like, "Should I call you Benjamin?" I said, "Only if I'm in trouble." You know.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. Well, thank you, Kish. It's great to have you today. Thank you for taking time today. What had you say yes to being on this show?
Oh man, we got introduced through a mutual friend. We got introduced through Marcus Ogden, and then as soon as
Yes.
we started to connect and kind of had our pre-show conversation, it was just there's a mutual energy there, and there's a synergy between what we believe as far as kind of challenging the ideas of what healing means and what some of the I guess social demands or social pressures of what you think healing should look like and how it intertwines with entrepreneurism and being, productive and being successful or whatever that means to so many different people, because what does that word even mean?
Yeah,
So I
right.
think anytime I link with like-minded people and there's a connection, I'm like, let's have more conversation, because I really pride myself on being a lifelong learner. So I'm thinking I'll pull some things from this just as much as hopefully I can deliver to you in the audience.
Beautiful. Well received, man. I always feel the same way. I'm like, I'm excited. What am I going to learn today? Talking to this human. And thank you for. I heard you mention the words healing, leadership, success, challenges, entrepreneurship. Um, feel like a feeling,
Yeah, exactly.
understanding and energy. So, what had you like? You're a big dude up to big things. You've been in. You've got all these football helmets behind you. You got trophies for anyone not seeing. He's got just all this amazing experience behind him of what he's created and where he's been and how he's carried himself. David, um, what had you get from the sports world? I don't get to talk to many athletes. I'm starting to more, but on the professional level, what had you find healing inside of being a coach? Like, where did that conversation come up for you?
Yeah, it
They don't
it
teach that in high school anymore.
no, definitely it gets
Or
skipped
ever.
over. It gets skipped over. So what made me find healing, man, was you have to trace it back, and so it's kind of my relationship with athletics as a whole has been my healing journey, right? And
Mm,
so what I mean by that is, I grew up in a single parent household. Never met my biological father. My stepfather struggled with addiction. And so I was the man of the house, quote unquote, at 11 years old. And my escape was athletics. My
mm,
escape was competition. My escape was football in particular. And so every time I can trace back in my life, every time I feel out of control or I feel like things are off kilter with me, if I can find my way back to athletics, they've always balanced me. And
mm,
in different ways, right? So when I was growing up, they were an escape from the pressures that I felt of, being, again, the man of the house at 11 years old. They were the escape from what was going on in the house. They were the escape from a lot of different things in my life. And so they gave me this outlet of where I could go and just let everything out. And football is a very aggressive sport. And so I excelled at that because I figured out, oh, I'm bigger and stronger than other people. And I don't get in trouble for hitting people on this field. So this is cool.
mm,
And so, I kind of got wrapped up in that. And then before I knew it, it became my identity. And I
mm,
was a football player, and that was who I was. And it was all I knew. And I grew up in a town where, if you're not familiar with the football culture, it's kind of like Friday Night Lights. And I'm sure most people have seen that movie. I mean, we literally have a sign coming into town that says God Family Football. Like, that's
mm,
what we do. The whole town shuts down. And so football was my vehicle, and it was my escape. And then I became a coach, and I was coaching, and it was still my identity. It was still, I was a coach before I was a son, before I was a brother, before I was a friend. I was a coach. And so what happened was, throughout my career, I found myself going deeper and deeper into that identity and not knowing who I was on the other side of it, like not knowing who I was without sports. And so
Mm,
it got to a point where I was at the Division I level, which is, for most people, the highest level of achievement as far as coaching. And so I'm
wow, that's
having these
phenomenal.
experiences, and it was great. It was a phenomenal experience. It was awesome, but there was still something missing. And what I realized was, I was missing parties, I was missing weddings, I was missing birthdays, I was missing family events. I mean, I didn't have a vacation for 8 years. And
Mm,
I was just so entrenched in this culture of like, do more, work more, achieve more. That's when people will love you. When you do the right things, that's when you'll be loved. When you win,
mm,
that's what matters. And
mm,
so, it really drove me to this point where I was like, okay, at one point, this was a kid trying to find an escape. Now it's all I know. And so, long story short, I ended up being diagnosed with depression and anxiety, started having panic attacks. And I realized, like, my past had one hand on the wheel. And so I
How
had to
old were you
explore
when
that.
you got that diagnosis?
28, 27, 27, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
So it was right after I left. And well, here's the crazy part: it was right after I left the Division I coaching world. So I was
Mm,
forced to sit in that silence. I was forced to. There was no more crowd. There was no more scoreboard. I had
mm,
to face the thoughts inside my head, and I was uncomfortable with that. And so it led me to therapy and led me on this healing journey. And now my relationship with athletics, I still love to compete, but I tell people all the time, I compete from a place of love now. It's not from a place of running from something else.
mm,
It's from a place of running towards the person that I can be and the person that I want to be.
mm. Wow, thank you for that. Um, I was thinking about. I mean, you've been a. I'm hearing voices like, "Come on, man! You're a Division One coach. What do you mean things are great? Like your life is baller. Like why? What are you talking about?" Um, and people can see that of CEOs, like, "Oh, that person's on top of the world. Like what? Come on." What do you notice after having been through that experience, may have been missing? Like, what's the truth of what it's like to be inside of that? Like, what's the hardest part? What do people not really know about the weight of carrying that as a coach?
Yeah, so the best way I can describe it is my first season at UNLV. We played Howard University. So typically, Division I schools will call a smaller school up, and we'll pay them to come play us. And it's basically like our tune-up game. So we
Mm.
call them in to get beat by us, basically, and we pay them. And they came in and they beat us. And it was the
Ooh.
largest point spread upset in Vegas sports history. In Vegas,
What was the
mind you.
score?
We ended up losing by, I believe, a touchdown, so 7 points. I don't remember what the exact score was. But regardless, we come into the office the next morning. So the game ends, and this is what people don't realize. The game ends at 10 o'clock because we're on the West Coast. So 10 o'clock game ends. Till you get out of the stadium, it's 11:30, midnight. You're in the office at about 6 a.m. the next day. So you have about 6 hours to go home, unwind, go to bed, wake up, come back to the office. So we get back to the office, and we had a meeting, and they said, there's a 50% chance we could all get fired today. And that's what people don't realize, is that your contract is not guaranteed. Like, most people don't go to work every day with the threat of being fired unless you do something egregious, right?
Mm,
But at that level, you could get fired any day, and there's nothing
mm,
you can do about it. And if the head coach gets fired, everybody underneath him is generally gone as well. So your future is tied to whatever coach you're working with, right? And
wow.
so it can be really difficult. So there's this pressure, and then there's also the unspoken pressure of, you're the one. There's only 148, I believe, Division I football schools. So there's a lot of people that want your job, and there's a lot of people that want to see you fail.
Mm,
And there's that pressure of, I have to show up every day and earn this, because you're reminded constantly that there are thousands, literally thousands of people that will apply for your job the day you fail, right? And so that's some of the ugly side of it. And again, just the hour requirement. I mean, we worked 7 days a week. I remember we played Hawaii, University of Hawaii. We flew back. We landed. Now, again, perks and pros and cons. We flew on a private plane, so we land on the private tarmac. We get a direct ride right to our car and everything, so we don't go through. There's no airport. There's no TSA. There's none of that. But regardless, we get back to the university at 5:00 in the morning. So we had flown overnight. We played the night before. We flew overnight. We worked on the plane, and then we get back to the university at 5 a.m. and we went straight to the office. You didn't go home. And so you're running on however much sleep you got on the plane, and then you just go straight to work, and you're there all day. And so, those are the things that people don't see. Those are the parts of it that people don't understand. The fact that you get, 3 days a year before camp starts, 3 days where you have with your family, and then you get, 3-4 days for Christmas. They don't see that, and so it's difficult, man. It's a tough life. I tell a lot of people that. It's very hard, especially for young men. And I'm not saying that it's not hard for young women as well, but for young men getting into the profession, I always tell them, like, when you're picking a significant other, you got to be careful, because you're asking somebody to come on a journey that maybe they don't want to sign up for. Yeah. The fact that, hey, we have a family here. I work at this university. You've established a life here, but guess what? On Monday, I work here. On Tuesday, I got let go. So there's no warning. There's no, hey, let's talk about this. It's no, you have to go where the job is. And so there's some challenges that come with it. But again, I wouldn't trade it for the world, man. It was an awesome experience, and it gave me so much joy in what I was doing, and taught me a lot about myself, taught me a lot about self-reliance, taught me a lot about work ethic. And I think that's a lot of the things that have transferred over to now that I'm in the entrepreneurial space. I think those traits have served me well.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk a little bit about self-reliance and work ethic in a moment, but I want to come back to something that you were pointing at. And what I heard, and I don't know if this resonates with you, is a burnout, right? Like going, pushing, definitely. Right? And you're in a high performance job with high performers, and there's only one of you, and the team needs you well. So if you're being pushed beyond limits where the human body does not, it's suboptimal, and you're not well, right? How do you run a team? And so I'm looking at, like, how do we thrive today, both have our team well, the people we lead, and ourselves. But if we're not taking care of ourselves, can we really give away leadership on that level?
No, you can't. And that's the challenge. And I've spoke about this before, and I can speak on it a little bit differently now because I'm outside the industry. So I can be a little bit more blunt and forward about what I say versus a lot of coaches are afraid. There's a scarcity mindset within that industry because of the limits of jobs and the number of jobs. But it's something that burnout is rampant in coaching. I mean, you see guys hit the wall all the time. There's jokes that, especially strength and conditioning coaches, because traditional coaches, you get the off season, right? So you have the off season where you're recruiting and you're doing things, but you're not working all the time. Strength and conditioning, you're in season all year round. You're going all year. And so it's a joke in the strength industry, the amount of caffeine, like that we should be sponsored by caffeine companies. And you see strength coaches with, bags under their eyes, and they're running on literally dry scooping, like straight caffeine pre-workout just to get through a day. Like, they're not eating. It's brutal, man. It's a thing where you're trying so hard to serve other people, but you're not taking care of yourself. And so how can you serve anybody? How can you do that? And so it's something that when I got out of that and I got into, get the opportunity to run my own department, it was something where I tell all my staff members as soon as I started, go home. Like, if you don't have to be here, don't be here. Go recharge, go do the things you need to do. If you need to leave in the middle of the day and take a nap, go do that, because I need you to be your best. And I was fortunate enough to have a boss who understood that as well. And so he would tell us, like, hey, if you need an hour, go take an hour.
Sounds like a great boss. Everyone listening is like, where do I sign up, coach?
Yeah, right. Well, it's, that now again, that hour was in the middle of a 14-hour workday, but we still got an hour.
Hmm. Hmm. Looking back on that now, you're a pioneer and you're talking about creating your, we'll talk about creating your way and making your way a little bit. Um, what might you put in place if you could do anything for the industry that might have like regenerative leadership showing up, some more healthy things that do you see a possibility for, like, I just had this whole world in my head. I want to share it with you of an idea of like you coaching coaches. Maybe you already do that. That's part of your, we'll learn about the leaders, the Eagle Leadership Academy here. But, I see an opportunity for high performance coaches, like even in the NFL Division 1, to have someone coaching them that's a wellness coach that's actually saying if they're taking care of themselves. Does anything like that exist? Have you ever thought of
Yeah,
that?
there's some programs that are starting to implement that. At some of the higher level, they're bringing on mental health professionals in particular to work with some of the burnout. And I know Ohio State in particular, just because I know the person that was heading up their department, does a really unique thing where the coaches have check-ins with a therapist, which I think
Hmm.
is unbelievable.
Hmm.
But it's become it was instituted by the head coach, and so he saw the
Hmm.
value in it. And as soon as that happened, it was like, okay, everybody's bought in now.
Hmm.
Because it makes sense. But yeah, I think it's something that's needed. I don't think we do enough for our coaches, and and unfortunately, it's still kind of a taboo thing. And I think part of it is because most coaching is male dominated, and so there's the social norms there. And then I think the other thing is just the culture of athletics and football in particular. Of the gladiator mentality, and are you hurt or are you injured, right? And so I think sometimes that's why it gets rejected. It is
Hmm.
becoming more prevalent, and I think with the amount of NFL players and some of the coaches stepping up and speaking out on these issues, I think that's helped. But I do think that there's a need for it, and it's something I would love to do. If there's any coaches out there listening to this, I would love to talk. I can talk to you about any type of frameworks and skills and things that you'd want to implement, because they're things that I wish I had, man. I mean, I hit a wall, and I know a lot of coaches that do.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I know life coaches and wellness coaches that too. And I remember being a personal trainer. That's probably the most burned out I've been in New York City, getting up, doing fitness, being somewhere at 5:36 in the morning, doing a whole nother job all day. And then 6 p.m., like going back to the gym, training people at night, getting home and like, I'm not well.
Right,
And
right,
trying to
yeah.
squeeze in a workout in between or something. And then going to a gym culture and seeing like trainers in gyms, like it's even more intense sometimes.
and and you can fall into an even deeper trap because you can take that into other areas of your life, right?
Yeah.
You don't know how to turn it off. And so I look at when I left coaching and I started my first business. So I started Edge Leadership Academy, and then 6 months later I started a second business and I opened
Mm.
a gym. And so now I was opening it, I had a gym running, I had my leadership business, I was taking PhD courses, I was writing my second book, and I had just moved in with my girlfriend
Whoa,
all at the
dude.
same time. And I ended up, that was when my anxiety, that's when I started having panic attacks, ended up slipping into this depression. But it was the only way that I knew how to function, because
Mm.
that's what I had done for 9 years prior in the coaching industry. So I just took it right into my regular life. Even though I had transitioned industries, I just took those same traits and those same toxic things that I had, kind of internalized, and I took them with me. And I was like, no, you just need to work harder. I just need to work harder. And I remember saying that, being literally burnt out to the point where I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, wasn't working out. I wasn't doing any of the ththings I needed to do to take care of myself. And I remember my girlfriend at the time saying to me, like, hey, you got to take care of yourself. Like, you got to do something here. And I was like, no, I just need to work harder. Like, that's the issue here. And
Mm.
that is such a backwards mentality to have. So yeah, that's, it's a slippery slope.
Thank you for that, for bringing that up. I'm just dropping in a quote. If anybody's listening live, please feel free to ask any questions or say any comments you have about this or burnout in your life. I just had the pleasure of launching my first retreat, and it's a wellness retreat for men. It's a healing retreat for men, and it shows men embracing each other, and that's a lot of the branding. And I got some feedback recently from a man that's like, I want to be honest, this isn't for me. I'm really concerned about men in this country, and I'm following this coach now who the try harder approach. I'm looking for a little more discipline. and I said, "Hey, man, I'm so happy you found something. I am all about people finding what works for them. And before you just go try harder, make sure you're putting the oxygen mask on yourself first. Because if you're not taking care of yourself and then you're just going to go push and barrel out there, you may be seeking validation through working hard rather than actually getting right with yourself."
You're trying to fill an internal wound with an external band-aid. Doesn't work.
Mm. So
Doesn't
tell
work.
me about that, because there's coaches out there, and I really want to hear your opinion on this. I'm really
Mhm.
curious because I've had a lot of coaches, and this is why I love the show, to interview different people who are like, "Yeah, just keep going, all balls to the wall." Other people are like, "Whoa, like peace and ease." Like, where do you feel like, especially because men, you mentioned men have been conditioned this way because football is led by men and men's mostly there, then they're not seeking help. Like, why aren't men getting the help they need, and why do you think men feel like they need to try harder in order to succeed?
Wow. Yeah, that's a deep question. I think
It is. I'm gonna drop it on you,
yeah, I no, I
coach.
like it, man. Let's get into this. I think, and this is my opinion.
Yeah.
Um, I think most men feel that our love is tied to our achievements, right? So we are loved when we are achieved, when we are achieving things.
Mm.
When we achieve a certain status, people love us. When we are able to provide, people love us. If we are not able to do those things, we feel internally that our worth has now been diminished, right? And I know that's how I felt. That's me being, raw and honest with you. Is I felt like people were proud of me because I was achieving these things. And so therefore I couldn't stop achieving those things because then people would stop loving me.
Yeah.
Right. And so I was putting my self-esteem and my self-worth in the hands of something external.
Mm.
And I think a lot of men are conditioned to do that at a young age. And I don't think it's intentional. I think it's just kind of what society has done and what society has bred. And then I think on the other side, the reason that we don't seek help is because the idea of masculinity, and I don't want to get too deep into the toxic masculinity versus non-toxic and all that, because I think the line is so gray and people have it,
Hmm.
all twisted up.
It's
Um,
subjective, right?
yeah, it's
Everyone's got
very
an
subjective,
opinion.
right? Because
Yeah.
I think from the outside, if you looked at me, right, like I'm a weight, I like to lift weights. I'm a football coach. I'm a strength and conditioning coach. I'm not a kumbaya. Let's sit around a corner and sit around a fire and hold hands and like do that. It's just not who I am. But at the
Hmm.
same time, I'm very compassionate. I'm very
Mm.
empathetic. I'm very in touch with my feelings. I'm able to express my emotions. I'm not afraid to say I'm scared or I'm
Mm.
upset or that hurt my feelings. Like, and I
Yeah.
think to me, it's this balance, right? There's a guy, his name's Matt Vincent. He talks on this a lot, and he says that it's half monk, half mother effort, right? And I think that's kind of the balance, right? But that's so hard to achieve because you have to battle so many the internal dialogue, the internal feelings, and then I think again, society at some level shames men for having feelings, right? I think there's some
Mm.
level of like you feel this internal, and maybe it's real, maybe it's not, maybe it's self-imposed. I don't know.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what I'm
but
curious about. Yeah.
yeah, but I think there's that feeling of shame, right? And I know in the football culture, like to be the guy that's hurt is not a good feeling.
Mm.
You get the feeling of you're letting the team down,
Hmm.
and you just have to
Even
go.
physical injury, you
Yeah,
mean?
physical injury. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. I played an entire season with a blown knee. Like
Yeah.
I had to sign a release form to say that I was refusing medical attention so that I
Oh my
could play.
God. Wow.
And it's so that's the mentality. Like people are applauded for that. Like I've seen guys that are sick or have the flu or they're injured or whatever. I saw one guy, he hadn't eaten, he had food poisoning, he was sick as a dog. He got an IV before the game, and then he played the game. Halftime, he got another IV bag, and then he went back out and played the game, and people celebrated it like
Mm.
that. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so I think there is a balance between toughness and whatever the other side of that is. I know I'm on a little bit of a tangent here, but
No,
yeah,
no,
I mean,
you're
I think
this
there's
is
a lot of
beautiful.
things. I think there's a lot of things that play into why men don't get help. Um, and I know even for me, when I started going to therapy and when I got diagnosed with depression and anxiety, one, it was a relief for me because now I knew what it was. But
Mm.
two, I was scared to death to admit that to people. I did not want to tell a soul that that happened to me. Like, what, man? I have anxiety. I have depression. What are you talking about? That can't happen to me,
Mm.
right? And then when I did start to share, all of a sudden my DMs, I was getting messages from friends of mine. I was getting messages from other men and people saying, "Hey, man, I went through something similar and I never told anybody." Or, "Hey, man,
Mm.
I'm still going through this." And there was one in particular, a friend of a friend, came up to me at a wedding and told me that, my story urged him to go get help. And he was a veteran and he hadn't gotten any help since he had been back. And it urged him to go get help. And he said, "Dude, you saved my marriage." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So at that point, that's when it switched for me from like, I have a responsibility to share my story. I have a responsibility to tell people and to talk about this stuff and to put this out in the forefront, um, because my story might be somebody else's survival guide. And so if I don't share it, that's selfish.
Mm. Mm. Preaching, man. I'm taking notes here. I'm dropping it in. If anyone's just coming in the conversation, you can check out the timestamp of when David's dropping these gems in here and get caught up in our chat. Please feel free to comment, and if you haven't subscribed already, please do so. David, sorry, Coach Kitch, um, what had you start the Eagle Leadership Academy?
Yeah, so it's Edge Leadership Academy.
Sorry, Edge
You're good.
Leadership
Come on now, man.
Academy.
Come on now, man. No, I'm just kidding. It's all good.
I actually have the website pulled up, but I thought I saw an eagle on your shirt. It stuck in my head. So I'm
There
dropping
you go.
the website right in here, the chat.
Awesome.
It's edgeleadershipacademy.com.
Yes, sir.
So why the Edge, Kitch?
So a couple things. One, I've always had an interest in leadership, and I have a background in sports psychology. I have a master's degree in sports psych, and now I'm finishing up my PhD in psychology. So I've always been interested in like high performance and leadership and culture as a whole. And so during my last season at Division one of my players, who in my opinion was the best player and best leader that I've ever coached, came in my office and he said, "I've been the best player on every team I've ever been on, and everybody's always telling me to lead, but nobody ever taught me how." And that was like a light bulb moment for me. So I was like, "Oh, okay." Because at the same time, I was hearing from coaches, administrators, pro scouts, all these different people. We need more leaders. We want people in leadership roles. We want people to step up and lead. Nobody was teaching anybody how, and nobody ever taught me how. And so that led me on this journey of like, okay, could there be a business here? Could there be a way for me to teach these things? And the way my mind works is frameworks and systems. That's just I kind of like to reverse engineer things. Yeah, and so I took the traits. I literally looked up through psychology and through the research. What are the top traits of leaders, and then successful leaders? And then from there, I started to break them down into frameworks and into their characteristics and their primary traits, the antecedents, and all the things that led to those. And I developed this curriculum. And then I started to teach it, and one thing led to another. I had a conversation with a friend of mine who was in business, and he said, "Dude, I hear this all the time from people in businesses. We need more people to step up and be leaders." And I'm like, "Do you think there's a market there?" And he said, "Yeah." And so now, we do corporate, we do athletics, we do nonprofit, we do everything. We work with individuals, and so that's kind of what led to it. The name Edge to me is because your talent will only take you so far. Your talent will only take you so far. So the edge is leadership. The edge is character. The edge is self-development.
Mm, mm, mm. Love that. So tell me why, like, what proof do you have that your talent will only take you so far? And putting in, leadership, self development, putting in those brand values, how does that make a difference?
Yeah. So I mean, there's plenty of anecdotal knowledge out there to it, and I mean, I could tell my own story. I was a highly recruited player, ended up at a small school, was one of the most talented players on the team, was the number one recruit that came in. I didn't start or play in a single game my entire 4-year career, not a single one, and it had nothing to do with talent. It
Mm,
had to do with all of my off the field issues because I hadn't gotten right with myself. I hadn't gotten right with my character. I hadn't gotten right with my ability to lead other people. I hadn't gotten right with my self awareness. I hadn't gotten right with my discipline. And so I saw it pan out in my own life, and I see it all the time when I'm working with clients. And so if you're not willing to invest in the character and in the development of your people, there's a ceiling on what you can achieve, because talent does not equal leadership.
Mm.
Look at any sport. Sports are a great example of this, just because it's pure, it's black and white, right? It's very simple to look at. You look at great players that tried to be coaches and they failed miserably.
Mm.
Couldn't do it, right? If you
Yeah.
look at the story of Michael Jordan was a phenomenal athlete, phenomenal player. He had to learn how to lead. He had to get his team to buy into him. He had to work on his character. The story, they just put out a documentary about the Redeem Team with Kobe Bryant, and how Kobe had to learn how to be a leader. He could score. I mean, the guy scored 81 points in a game. He could score. He had to learn how to lead, right? And so, again, I say all the time, your talent will get you halfway up the mountain. The only thing taking you to the peak is your character.
Mm. Wow. Talent will only get you halfway up the mountain. And the only thing that will take you to the peak is your character.
Has to, because your character is what protects you, right? If you have a set of values, if you have a mission, if you have a vision, that's the only way that you can maximize your talent. Otherwise, talent is no better than potential.
Mm. So, where do you see? What do you feel like the core parts of character that really matter today in leadership and to you?
Yeah, I think it starts with self-awareness, and I think it's understanding your vision, your mission, and your values, right? So when I say that your vision is your long term goal for your life, it could be kind of abstract. And so for me, when I look at it, like, my vision personally is to leave a legacy for my family to be proud of. That's my vision in life. That's what I want to do. My mission is to impact as many people as I can and to inspire greatness in everybody that I come across. Right. So I know that if I do that every single day, if I inspire greatness in every person, whatever version of greatness they're capable of, if I inspire that in that person and I educate them and help them and try and bring that out in them, if I do that every single day, I will leave a legacy through the people that I impact. Right. So I know that my mission will get me to my vision. Now, my values, these are the important piece. This is the piece where it comes into leadership. Along that trail, right? Along that trail going to your vision, to the mountaintop, you're going to see a lot of things. You're going to be tempted to go the wrong way. You're going to be tempted to what's the word I'm looking for here? Compromise. There we go. You're going to be tempted to compromise on your values. You're going to be tempted to compromise on your ethics. You're going to see people who don't want you to succeed. You're going to see people who are telling you why you can't succeed. You're going to see a bunch of people who tried really hard and came up short. There's going to be storms. There's going to be setbacks. There's going to be adversity, right? Your values are what keeps you safe in the storm. And I say that all the time to people. When people say core values, and this is an issue I have with popular culture right now, and especially in the human resources department. So I'm going to take a little jab at my HR people. When we talk about core values,
let's go. Like, we got to raise the bar. Come on, people.
We have to. When we say core values, the number one question we always ask people is, what do you stand for? Here's my issue with that. Standing is a passive activity. Having core values in your life is not passive. You can stand on the right, you can be on the right track, but if you're just standing there, you're going to get run over. Yeah. You have to fight for them. So I ask people, what do you fight for? What are the things that you fight for? And so if you're a leader and you're not sure, ask yourself this. If somebody came to you and took everything away from you, so if somebody came to me and said, you're no longer a coach, you're no longer an author, you're no longer a business owner, etc., what would you use to rebuild your life? Those are your core values. So I look at it and I say, number one, I would start with being honest, because that's who I am. I know that I'm honest with people. And I tell people from the first interaction with them, I'll never lie to you. And I genuinely mean that. Number two, I'm caring. I genuinely care about people. Have I got burnt by it? Absolutely. I care about people to a fault. I'm okay with that. Number three, I'm driven. I can control that. I won't be outworked, period. I don't care what kind of shape you're in. If we get on a treadmill next to each other, you're getting off first, period. Right? And then number four, I'm committed to growth in all areas of my life. It's not about being perfect. It's about answering the question that most people try and avoid. What are you truly capable of? Right? That's my definition of being committed to growth. So I have those four things. So if somebody took everything else away from me, if I had those four things, caring or honesty, caring, driven, and committed to growth. If I had those 4 things to rebuild my life, I'd be able to get back on track. And so when I talk about character with leadership, that's what I'm talking about, because those 4 things, everybody around me knows those 4 things. Everybody around me knows that those are non-negotiables in my life. And so they're reflected in my business. They're reflected in the way that I lead my people. So that's why I start with character when I talk to leaders.
Yes. Thank you for that. Wow. That really hits home here. Looking at our character behind our business, no matter how successful you are. And I feel like that comes back to, like, I hear people say, well, karma, you got to treat people how you want to be treated. And I actually appreciate that you're leading with this. I've heard a lot of feedback from people that they're concerned about men in America today. And there's sort of a push to, re-alphatize men and a push to rebalance men. And I'm really looking for how we can just all learn from each other. That's why I created Dude School, so men could learn from each other. Where dudes become men because we can listen and learn and stop competing. But what do you feel like is really missing in men today? Like, if there was one core value that feel like is missing, that
vulnerability, hands down. Immediately, as soon as you said that, I knew what it was.
Yeah, I was like, couldn't even
finish the question. No, I get excited. I get fired up about this. Vulnerability. You have to, and vulnerability is not what people think it is. I think it is. This jacks me up. Vulnerability. Okay, people have this idea of it in their mind that it's this soft thing. There is nothing stronger in the world than the ability to be vulnerable. There's nothing stronger. It's the ability to show up as yourself, scars and all, set boundaries, take risks, innovate, receive feedback, ask for feedback, give feedback, have the hard questions, love hard, play hard, compete hard. That's vulnerability. Vulnerability is living life in the arena. That is vulnerability. And so when we say what's missing from men and what's missing from a lot of people, I'll generalize it beyond men. There's too many people sitting in the stands, not enough people in the arena, not enough people putting skin in the game. Because we can sit behind a keyboard and we can judge each other. It takes vulnerability to put yourself out there and try. You look at it, people get judged for trying. I hate it. It drives me nuts. People get judged for putting their feelings out there for somebody. They get shot down, whatever, and then all of a sudden everybody makes fun of them. Why? Live with passion. Live that. Be vulnerable. Be willing to be out there. Be willing to get hurt. Be willing to try hard at something, come up short, get hurt, stand up, dust yourself off, lean on somebody. That's another key. Lean on somebody who's around you, find your tribe, and then go back to work and try it again with a better idea because you innovated and because you took feedback. All those things are vulnerability. So these quote unquote alpha ideas, a lot of them involve vulnerability. So it's like this, we're arguing the same point back and forth, and we're putting it behind this veil of like Spartanism and ruthlessness and all, and that's not what it is. It's not what it is. If you look at, and again, I'm getting on a tangent a little bit, but like,
no, this is my like a topic of passion. So I love
we talk about this. Yeah, we
this
talk
is why
about
you're
like,
here today. This is beautiful.
Oh man, it jacks me up because like we compare alpha men and we say the Spartans, right? The Spartan warriors and this and that and the other. Look at the type of art that those people put out. Look at some of the poetry that they put out. Is that ruthless? They loved hard too. They fought hard, but they loved hard, right? And why did they fight so hard? Because they loved what was behind them, not because they hated what was in front of them. That's why.
Wow.
Right. So when you talk about this, when people talk about this alpha and this and that and the other, listen, you have to do things. You can be ruthless in execution from a place of love. You can do that. You can do that. And to me, that is vulnerability. That is strength, right? I still compete. I want to win 100-0, but I don't want to win 100-0 because I hate the other people that do what I do. I want to win 100-0 because I love myself and because I love the people that I'm trying to provide for. But I also know if I win 100-0, I'll shake your hand and I'll tell you everything I did to beat you because I want to help you get better too. Because me shining brighter does nothing if I don't light somebody else's candle.
Thank you for saying that. All of that. That is exactly why I got into this work, because I believe in that. And it's so rare that I've heard a man say those words. And so thank you. That for me personally, that was a beautiful reflection.
Thank you.
Because I have this intuition, but I'm just one guy. So as I get to speak to more men, I'm like, what is that? Because I sense that too. And I'm really looking for how we can find that balance. So there's usually, there's some closing questions that I ask all my guests. And I feel like you just answered one of them, which is, but I'm going to ask you anyway. And you can change your mind or whatever you want to say. But one of them is, well, actually, I'm going to save that for last because it's the juiciest. So I'm going to go back to the top. So I've got a few closing questions. First of all, if your life was a movie up until this point today, it was a Hollywood film, what would be the name of that film?
Life in the Arena.
Nice. And if you're, you say you're in a relationship?
I'm not. I'm single right now.
Okay. So if your ex girlfriend were to name this movie, what might they call it?
Wow. That's a great question. That's a great question. I would say Complicated. That would be
Great.
the name of the movie. Complicated, starring Will Ferrell.
Nice. And your film, Life in the Arena, you can cast your parents. So who in Hollywood would get to play your parents?
Man. My mom. That's another great question. Wow, you're killing it with these. I don't know. I never met my dad, so that's an easy one. We can leave that blank. That could just be like the
Hmm.
shadow, the outline, like the Facebook one. You don't have a profile picture.
Oh
We'll use
yeah.
that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Powerful.
Yeah. My mom would probably be played by, man. I don't
You
know if
could use
she's.
a female athlete
Yeah.
if actors
I'm
are
trying
harder
to.
to think of.
I'm trying to think of like a character that kind of sums my mom up, and I don't know that there is one out there. Like she's this balance of fun loving and humor with just this grittiness and this unrelenting passion for life. Like it's very interesting. She's a very interesting person.
Hmm.
So I don't know that I could sum her up in one person. She might need a couple like stunt doubles.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. She's like one of those multi-layered. The film has like,
Yeah.
being John Malkovich, there's all these people that play parts
Yes.
of the screen.
Yeah.
You can have
Yeah.
like a
Like
bunch of people
that's
playing
kind
your
of my
mom.
mom, man. She's an interesting human being, man. I'll tell you what,
Mm,
I've learned a lot from her. But whoever it is would win an Oscar. I can tell you that.
nice. Nice. Oh, that's a beautiful acknowledgement of your mother. Um, if your mom were to name this movie about your life, what might she call it?
The weight of the world. She tells me all
Ooh,
the time, David, you walk around like you have the weight of the world on your shoulders, or you choose the weight of the world on your shoulders.
wow. Wow. That's beautiful and powerful, like intense. Yeah. It's also the name of my band's next album that's coming out this fall because we've been
Love
through
it.
it too. Like, what is that? And you're gonna hear it, right?
Yeah.
Um our band
So
is
you
Dirty
guys can
Hank.
play this. So you can play the soundtrack then.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah, we'll create a soundtrack for you. Um and do you have any favorite curse words?
Yeah.
What's your
I mean,
favorite one?
I think fuck is probably the most versatile word in the English language.
Nice. I gets a
Like
lot of love. Yeah,
yeah,
that's pretty popular here on the
yeah.
show.
I use it way more than I should. But
Yeah.
it's I didn't know if we were allowed to curse on this, so I kept it to a. I don't think I dropped one all
No,
podcast. So
I
I've done
was
pretty well.
impressed.
I did pretty good.
Well,
But
I,
yeah, it's
I ruined that
definitely one.
early on. We've been explicit for a while now. It's great. Like let's get real. I want to be able to
Yeah,
talk
just be
about it.
honest. You have to be able to. You have to be able to.
And if you live in New York, if you've ever lived near New York like me, you got to learn to embrace the F word. It's like
It's a
part of
whole nother language.
Yeah, exactly. The
Yeah, no,
language of love,
yeah, yeah.
like an Italian. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Um, well, David, if you could, first of all, before my last question, I want to thank you again for your time and for being so vulnerable today, and for being
Absolutely.
courageous and showing us what I believe a true leader can look like and does look like. And thank you for walking the talk and talking the walk and being willing to put yourself out there. As I've grown a mustache, I've been thinking a lot about Ted Lasso. And because I've never had one, and it's really had me. And I'm a coach, but I haven't coached sports teams in a long time. But even hosting the show, like you were talking about, it's one thing to know how to lead, but then to be able, to be a great performer, but then to be a great, coach or director or space holder. It was like a whole nother muscle I had to learn
Oh,
to
it's
develop. And
there's
so I just
no
want to
doubt.
thank you for being willing to be on both sides with people. And you really exemplify something I hope all men get to experience. That's my commitment. That, when you said everything's taken away from you, like I felt love present. Like that's what I have to offer. And the moment you showed up here, I felt love present with you. And you're also like one of the most powerful dudes I know. So like, what a beautiful human to get to be part of. And thank you for sharing yourself with me.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. No, I enjoy it. I think these are the conversations that need to be had. And so if I can be the one to spark it, then let's do it, man. Anybody
Mm.
that wants to, let's please. If there's an opportunity, I'm the guy that if you crack the door a little bit, even if we're out having beers and somebody cracks the door for one of these conversations, I'm like, here we go. I'm dialed
Yeah.
up. Get me my
Yeah.
soapbox, please. Line up 4 more of those beers, and here we go. You're gonna hear it. Welcome to
That's
my TED
great.
Talk.
Well, I have put your website here, the edgeleadershipacademy.com. Please feel free to reach out to him directly. If you don't, then reach out to me and I'll put you in touch. I'd be happy to introduce anyone to you. And David, if there's any way I can support your mission with what I'm up to in the world, please don't hesitate to reach out to me too. I just so believe in you and what you're up to, and I'm honored to get to put some of that on loudspeaker today. So if we helped anyone out there, let us know. That's one of the greatest things you can do is just comment. And as people of service, it's really nice to know when we actually make a difference. So please
Absolutely.
reach out to David. You can follow the Edge Leadership Academy on Instagram as well as their website. Um, David, if you could give the world one gift today, what would you give us?
The gift of knowing that you are enough. You are. We are. We all bring something to the table. We all have gifts. We all have things. It's your job to maximize those and work on them. But you are enough as you are right now, and I think that is something really powerful for people to hold on to, because when you do that, I tell people all the time, to make it a little bit dark for you, I'm a murderer, right? I killed Mr. Perfect. I killed the
Mm,
idea of Mr. Perfect in my mind,
mm,
and I am not attached to my accomplishments anymore. And I
mm.
say that all the time. And the minute you can do that, when you realize that who you are is enough, you're free to do anything. I've been more successful by all the traditional metrics since I let go of trying to be successful by the traditional metrics.
Mm. Oh, thank you, Coach. And if we were to receive that gift, if everyone was to receive that gift of knowing that we are enough, what do you see us all doing?
The thing that keeps you up at night that you're afraid to do because you're afraid of what people will say.
Nice. Nice. That's beautiful. Well, dudes, thank you for your time, for listening. This is Coach Kitch, David Kitchen, our special guest here with Ben Curtis on Dude, You're Getting Well. Have a beautiful day. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, so that you can be the first one to hear this when it drops and get more beautiful medicine from leaders transforming their pain into their purpose. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
So great.